All right, I think it's a good time to start. So, good morning to you. Happy Saturday. I hope everybody's doing well. I know things are winding down. School is winding down for people, so there are shifts going on in your household, I'm sure. I want to acknowledge that I think this has been a really hard week for America. Um, and I just want to acknowledge that. I want to acknowledge today that there are 100,000 plus people dead now from coronavirus, and we're dealing with racial unrest in our cities right now. And I just want to take just a few seconds to honor that sadness and that grief and that uncertainty that I know many people are feeling. I know many of our teens are feeling. I don't want people to think that I'm not aware of all of that when I give these webinars, that I'm only thinking about the positive. And I think that this is what leaders do. You know, leaders look at what is there, what exists, you know, in the beauty and the ugliness. All of this are like data points for us when we are innovating. And I just wanted to give a moment to just acknowledge that, to acknowledge where we are. And I'm doing that, and I'm doing everything that I do because I really care about the future. And I think the students who work with me, I think they've figured that part out. But I really do. And I'm doing these webinars because I know we all care about the future. And this is, you know, my little way of bringing us together and doing that collectively. Parents, people who are already connected to Blue Stars, people who are maybe just getting to know Blue Stars or just checking in for this particular topic. And teens, hopefully this is an intergenerational collective that maybe we're building here in conversation. So my goal is always to help teens become healthy and strong adults. That's why I'm here. That's what I'm doing. And hopefully these webinars are, fortifying our teens in some way or another. And if you're a parent and your teen is not with you listening, hopefully you're getting this energy and you're bringing that to your teens. So I hope we keep this all in mind as we move forward. And let's do that now. Let's move forward. Let's just take, all that tough stuff and just put that aside for now. It's going to be there when we're done with the webinar. And let's think about, I don't know, all the good stuff, all the hugs or the shared meals or the alone time maybe you got this week, the nice walk you had. And let's take that with us and let's move forward. So we've got some news and I have to share my screen. And then we're going to pull Laura in. So welcome. Here we are. Personal insight question 2. Oops. This is me, Dr. M. I'm the founder, CEO of Blue Stars Admissions Consulting, and we're now going into our 11th season. It's our 10th year anniversary, and doing really exciting work, as I said, devoted to helping teens become very strong adults, and at least college students who show up to college with a sense of self-possession, a sense of who they are, a sense of personal management and discipline and organization. So here's the team, and I'm really excited to have Laura join us today. Okay, quick rapid response update, then let's dig into UC Personal Insight question 2. Laura's and my personal favorite, and then here you can see the schedule, and we will carry on week after week. All right, let's go forward together. Here are our topics: impact on current seniors, juniors, freshmen and sophomores, I got some cool wisdom for you. It's my favorite part. And then we're going to talk about personal insight question 2. Okay. All right, here we are for current seniors. Many colleges are planning mass testing in the fall. They're really trying to open up, but the question still is, will they have enough tests? Is this realistic? And so on some level, this isn't news. It's just news that there are concerns and there are efforts, and stay tuned, watch this space, as they say. Some schools most definitely have an edge. So if a school has, a public health school, a medical school, like UC San Diego, as I announced a few weeks back, they plan on doing mass testing. They're already doing it. So there are about 5,000 students on campus right now, and they're right now testing these students. So they're trying to put protocols in place. So stay tuned, and obviously, if you are a graduating senior, stay in touch with the school you're planning to attend. They'll be the best source for you, obviously. What we're finding out is that more students are being taken off the wait list. So, you never know if you are on the wait list for one of your dream schools. I wouldn't give up on that dream. I'm not saying you should hold fast to the dream, but there are stories of more students being taken off the wait list, and also being given offers from their dream schools. So, and I have to say too, in seasons past, we've had students taken off the wait list like in August. It can happen. So there's that. Okay, so I sat in on a webinar between Sal Khan and Stu Schmill, who is a director of admissions at MIT, just this past Thursday or Wednesday. And this is what he says about college next year. It's going to look very different than it did last fall. There will be social distancing. There probably won't be large gatherings. So yeah, it's a time of loss and grief on a lot of different levels. It will come back. It'll totally come back. All right. Impact on current juniors. June SAT is canceled. The ACT CEO was also canceled this week, and it's a little snarky of me. I'm sorry. When I was writing my notes, I just thought it was sort of funny. But yeah, the ACT, they fired their CEO this week. And there's discussion, or there's questions about whether the College Board CEO will be next in terms of the management. So I don't know, another space to be watching. Again, very, very dynamic, very, very tense space. Stu Schmill did note in his conversation with Sal Khan that MIT is not letting go of the SAT or ACT. Like, they do not plan on doing that. For them, it is the best objective measure, among other things. It's totally not the only thing. So anyway, this is sort of an ongoing conversation that we've been having about standardized tests. I wanted to keep you up to date. So the June ACT is being held, but like most of the testing places are closed. So I have the list, like almost every place in California, as far as I can tell. So here are the new fall SAT dates. I know it was not possible to register a few days ago. I believe the website is back up, so you should be able to register for those. If you're a junior, time to get serious with your summer, time to get serious with your applications. And I know there's a lot to juggle with the SAT prep, and I'm sorry. And we're here. We're totally here to help you juggle this crazy load. Freshmen and sophomores, let's get focused on those personal growth summers, also having fun. And juniors, you should have fun too. It's just I didn't have any more room on the slide. And if you don't know yet what to do with your summer, I invite you to check out session 5 in the COVID-19 playlist on YouTube, and there are a bunch of ideas there for you. And I just want to advise you to stay COVID conscious and make sure that you're volunteering is responsive. So even though you're a younger high school student, sort of almost racking up that record of doing work that is responding to like a need of the time and urgency of the time, that will be just an extra little touch that could boost your application once you're adding a bunch of other things on top of that. Okay. Wisdom already, yay, from Stu Schmill. This is a very nice conversation. We don't admit perfect people. They don't exist. If students could relax more and do things they like with as much enthusiasm as they can and not forget to be good family members and community members, relax and don't try to be that perfect person. Don't think of yourself as a college applicant first, but a person and a community member. So, FYI on that. I thought that was really helpful, really helpful. One more piece of wisdom from Stu Schmill. MIT students don't have an overinflated view of who they are. So, we work directly with younger students who are really excited about MIT, and MIT might be like the dream school for them. Of course, we don't put all of our eggs in one basket, but if you really want to know what does it take to get into MIT, it's a lot, you know, of excellent standardized test exam among many other things. Competitions are really, really helpful for MIT, but also don't have an overinflated view of yourself. Don't come off as an arrogant person. That won't help your case there. One more piece of wisdom from Sal Khan, quoting Frozen 2 in conversation with Stu Schmill during this Facebook Live. Do the next right thing. It's perfect. It was just like the perfect response. And he's so wonderful, Sal Khan. I really admire him. And these conversations are just absolutely lovely, really lovely to participate in. Okay. Oh, here we are. We're ready. Let me grab Laura here. Hi, Laura.
Hi, Amy.
I'm trying to get myself in here too. How are you doing today?
I'm good. How are you? I'm excited to be here.
Yay!
Yeah.
Excited to have you here. Yeah. I mean, what's nice is our students get to see us in conversation when we're in meetings with them together, but
Yeah.
the larger audience doesn't get to see us in conversation. So that's why I thought it'd be a really cool idea to invite you guys into the personal insight question part of the webinar. And it's just so much fun to collaborate on these essays together. So welcome.
Thank you.
And what are we doing today? We're going to talk about personal insight question 2 on creativity. And as I've been announcing, that is our favorite. So, okay, cool, let's get started. But before we get started on personal insight question 2 specifically, I just want to review just the general tips on writing the personal insight essay. So let's do that first, and then we'll get to the specific essay question. Okay. So just to recap and rehearse from last week, first thing you want to do is you definitely want to be specific. You want to stay focused on one aspect or one story. You want to include a takeaway or a lesson learned. Don't get fancy. Write in a voice that is almost like you are talking, okay? Don't try to project this great writing voice that you don't have. Now, some students have a writing voice they can apply to their UC essays. They've been writing for a long time. But if you're not that student, don't try to be the other kind of student. Seriously write in your own voice. And many students who don't consider themselves good writers, they get into great UC schools just telling their story in their voice. All right, expect to write multiple revisions so you can work through initial bad ideas. So we can't stress that enough. And we know it's in a team's nature to wait to the last minute, or most, not all, but most. It's just where you are in your developmental journey. So if there's a way for you to just really try and talk yourself into starting early, and you're gonna hate what you write. I mean, you have to get through. Every writer goes through this. Every writer. Good writers aren't good writers because just what comes out of their mouth or their brain spontaneously is good. No. They're good writers because they have the courage to face the stuff that they wrote that they hate. That's really, in many ways, what a good writer is. So this is important training, and the earlier you can start, the better, you know? So, yeah. So as you can see, there aren't many guidelines. There are just a few. So this can serve as like an easy checklist, right? Just an easy checklist. If you follow them, or rather if you work through them, then you will end up with a great essay. I'm not saying it's going to be comfortable. I'm not saying it's going to be a smooth ride, but if you keep going back to these, if you get lost, if you go back to these guidelines and you struggle through, and you go through this process of writing a few drafts, you are going to have a good essay. All right, well, it's no coincidence that that first tip is be specific.
Definitely. I think it's just important to pause there for a moment and really emphasize the be specific part, especially with creativity. You want to avoid like talking about creativity in general. You want to show your creativity through, you know, details about what you made, what you initiated. Just to give you a really quick example, don't write, I play music because it helps me express my emotions, right? You want to try something more like, I play the piano to explore sadness and joy. And then you want to detail, you know, a moment of you playing a specific piece on the piano and really let your reader see you connecting to that joyful memory. So that's a very simple example, but just to start moving into that idea of specificity.
Specific, specific, specifics. I always like to say the angel is in the details, which is a spin on a popular idiom. The devil is in the details. The angel, the details charm. All right, well, there's so much to say about our creativity prompts, so I'm just going to get right to it and take us through the prompt. And I'm not sure, I'm going to like move our video. Or I'm just going to, I feel like it's in the way here. Maybe it's up here, it'll be okay. Move it back down here. I'm putting it on the bottom. Okay, here's the prompt, and as you see, this time I bolded and color coded, and this is just a way to make it graphic. Again, we always read through the prompt and talk about the components. So every person has a creative side, and it can be expressed in many ways: problem solving, original and innovative thinking, and artistically, to name a few. Describe how you express your creative side. Okay, so we've got my blue bolds, the creative side, the many ways, and the how, and we're going to circle back to that. And then you see that I've color-coded the different ways that they talk about this. And also there are tips on the UC Personal Insight question website, the landing page as well, that you can consult. So we've got problem solving, we've got original and innovative thinking, and then we have the artistic ways in which you can express yourself. All right, cool. So we'll hang out here with the prompt here. What kind of tips do we have? Because we have super specific tips for you guys.
We do. The UCs really define creativity very broadly. So I think that's the first thing to make sure students realize. It doesn't have to be music, art, theater, dance, although it obviously could be those things. Creativity can apply to coding, to social entrepreneurship, to gardening. It can be something like organizing a new system in your household, something you did to help your family, that sort of thing. So really opening it up.
I don't think people realize how open-ended this prompt is.
Absolutely. You know, it's funny, I was going through my archive of old student essays to look for samples to discuss, and I noticed that not a lot of students answer this prompt. And I think it is because they define it narrowly when they look at the questions. But those who do answer it really have a lot of success with UC admissions. And I think the reason for that is that the creativity essay gives you a place to reveal things about yourself that you don't have the opportunity other places in the application. And really, you don't have the opportunity even with other personal insight questions. So it's a good one.
I know there is that one question, the last UC personal insight question, and I forget the exact language, but how do you stand out, as a candidate? And there are some college counselors who advise students that you have to answer that question. And interestingly enough, we don't do that question very much at all, because we think the creativity question really is a place where you can show your uniqueness. And of course, every question is an opportunity for that. And when you have a question that just asks you directly head on to answer that, it's a little awkward. It's a little odd. So the personal insight question too is a hidden gem. That's why I would call it that. It's a hidden gem, and it's a place where you really can show your uniqueness. You really can stand out. And, especially in these times, as I started the webinar today on maybe a little bit more of a somber note, what shifts that somberness of grief and sadness into joy? Creativity. That's the energy there. And so especially in these times, creativity is going to be something valued in an applicant. And of course, it wouldn't be a Blue Stars webinar without talking about the 7 C's and the 7 core attributes of admissions distinction. And of course, creativity is among the 7 C's. So it's an exciting place to be. It's a way to make your application a little bit more exciting.
It really is. And I just want to remind our STEM students, there's so many ways to write about creativity, right? You can write about problem solving, any project where you were showcasing your original innovative thinking, something that you've worked on. But what I think is really important for all students, so STEM students, art students, humanities students, is that when you respond to this question, you really show the how. So how did you execute your creative project, whatever it was? Not just the fact that you did it. Really, really important to show the process, no matter what subject the essay is focusing on.
Yes, so as we like to say, it's not just the what, but it's also the how, right? You want to be in some way documenting your work in the essay. And, that's different than writing about your creativity symbolically. You don't want to do that. You don't want to talk about the fact that you took art or piano lessons for 10 years. That's a sort of symbolic way of talking about it. Rather, you want to talk about, oh, yes, you took art lessons for 10 years and learned the craft and then made a mural at a homeless shelter in the kids' room, or have a practice of making homemade cards for your friends and family. So you want to, you can talk about your training, but that's not the end of the response. You want to talk about what you did.
Exactly. Creativity leads to cool things, right? So we can't forget that. And we want to make sure in these essays that students are really noting the outcome of what happened. So what were the results? And these can be qualitative results, right? They can be, did you have a breakthrough? Did this lead to other endeavors? And how did that accumulate over time? And of course, it can be quantitative too. Did you win an award? Was there some tangible end result? And then another really important question to ask and to answer in this essay is, why does this matter?
Can't forget about the why, right? The larger significance, the meaningfulness of something, right? The larger context. So, why, sometimes when you write about creative things, it might be outside of the box, it might be unconventional, but it doesn't mean that it's also random. people often have this misconception about art, is that it's something you can't understand. But your creative endeavor should have a meaning that you can talk about in your essay.
Definitely. Okay, our last tip, but it's very important. You really want to include why your creative side, whatever it is you've showcased in your essay, has value beyond this one specific example. So you really want that specific example, but then for a moment you want to take us out and say, okay, this is how I think it will impact me moving forward, and this is how I think future me, which we love to help students imagine, this is how future me will use it in college and beyond college.
Yes, the future you. That's a big piece of what how we work with our students, helping them come up with that vision of what they might be like 5, 10 years, 15 years down the road. And this is a really great essay where you can really showcase that. So to quickly recap, we've gone through a bunch of different things in our conversation. To quickly recap, what you want to do with this essay is you want to write specifically about one example. You want to talk about how you did it. You want to talk about why you did it. And then you want to pull the lens back just a little bit more. And if you can, show the larger significance of what you did beyond that particular instance. So for example, if you're someone who has curated a bunch of anti-fast fashion shows at your high school, for example, you can tie together what you're doing to your interest in sustainability or fair labor practices or something like that, right? You'll be making it clear that what you're doing is sort of playing into the global community in some ways. It doesn't have to, you don't have to be talking about the global community, but that's just one way in which, pulling the lens back, becomes really clear. What does this essay ultimately say about you, right? That's what your reader would like to know. Okay. All right, so let's do a little summarizing. Let's do a little summarizing. I think I'm gonna have to move us here. Move us up here. Maybe I'll put us back. Sorry. I'm hoping I don't want us to block the text. Okay. All right. So here we've got some tips for UC Personal Essay 2. So document your personal creativity. Not your personal, sorry. Document your actual creativity, problem solving, innovative thinking, rather than relying on symbols of creativity. Focus on one example. Write about the how or the process. Write about the why or the larger context. Pull that lens back to show the significance of your example beyond this singular instance, and make sure your example indicates something meaningful about you. Okay. So also not a ton of tips. Not a ton of tips. A lot of it is just wrestling with the writing of the draft. So, you might be thinking about an area you want to talk about, and right now in your notes, maybe some journaling, you want to drill down to the specific example. And then you want to start taking notes on the specific example, maybe in terms of this checklist. And once you start doing that, the draft might actually start writing itself. Okay? Do what feels most natural. And if that doesn't feel, talk into your phone. I talk into my phone. Get a Google Doc going and just blah, blah, blah. Leave it aside for a day. Go look at the checklist. Go back and look at the Google Doc. In lots of ways that initial leap, it feels hard, but you got to take it. You got to take it. Anyway, to provide you with even more inspiration, Laura and I have prepared some examples. So I'm going to pull the prompt up again, and let's get into some examples. So do you want to tackle the first one, Laura?
Yes. So this first example is a student I worked with a few years ago, and I just think of this essay from time to time. It's just, it's a really wonderful, unique essay. I think such a great example of how to answer this question in your own way. So this is, he really focuses on his creativity, not through a big art project or a big, creative thinking project, which we talked about earlier, but he still has such a great story, and it's such a successful essay. So I actually want to just start by reading his first line, which I've written down to share with you all. So he begins the essay by saying, "Having worn a school uniform for my entire early education, I was totally unprepared for the fashion demands of high school." So I just love that as a way to, it's such a good example of a hook too, right? Because don't you want to keep reading that? And I also think you really immediately get a sense of his voice, which is another really important piece. So in this essay, he essentially describes how he navigated this feeling of transitioning to high school and feeling awkward. What happens is he stumbles across a design concept that some of you may have heard of, wabi-sabi, and it translates to the beauty of imperfection. And so this idea really stuck with him, and he writes about that. It ultimately kind of inspires him to be more confident, and he sees like his own imperfections as these strengths, and he writes about that in a wonderful way too. But through this lens of fashion, right, the essay details how he became an expert on sneakers. So he knew so much about sneakers. It was really fun to talk to him about it. And he started a small business out of all of this information that he had learned and, connected with about fashion, and specifically sneakers. So I think this essay is just a perfect example of a student he was a science-oriented student, a business student, and he applied this creative, spirit to his personal life, and then showcased how it connected to his other interests and really how it enriched them. It's just, so I think it's a fantastic example of making this essay your own.
I love this essay, and we worked with the student for many years. So it's all smiles. But yeah, one reason why we chose this essay is to also show that you don't have to write about a monumental project. You can write about the way in which you practice creativity on a daily level, and then the way that feeds back into the rest of your life. And so there was almost like a feedback loop quality to his essay. So that's another piece, the feedback loop piece. But also, again, it doesn't have to be a project. It could be something more humble. So, as we go through these examples, we also pick them to show, like, you don't have to be a creative star. You don't have to be a hero in all of your essays or in any of your essays. Well, on the other hand, if you look through my hero's journey chapter of our free workbook, I say everybody is a hero. Everybody is a hero in their own way, so you don't have to worry about being a hero. You just have to sort of show how you did things, what you learned from it, how you're going to take that into your future. But you don't have to be like it doesn't have to be monumental for you to write a great essay and get into a great UC school. So, okay, well, I'm going to talk about one of my faves. And one of my favorite essays on creativity is by an art student who did not at all write about her art practice in this essay. Her creative qualities, her artistic practice was really obvious in the rest of her application. It came through in her other essays. So what she decided to do was to write about her artfulness as a mock trial witness. She was very, very devoted to mock trial in high school. And so what she did was she talked about how in mock trial, she didn't just play by the rules. She threw herself into the performative elements of being a witness. And so she created very moving performance that had the judges crying and stuff and coming up to her afterward. And in doing so, first of all, she, led her team to victory. But she did so because she elevated the art of the game, of mock trial. And she showed her teammates and her competitors and the judges what is actually possible in a way they couldn't see before. So we felt like, there's so much other art stuff going on in your application, but there's this other contribution that you've made that does involve innovation. And that also fed back into her profile as an artist. Oh, this is someone who's, pushing the envelope. We want artists to be doing that. And that's what she did. And the student is actually, as we know, younger students who know her and really admire her. She's sort of like a legend. I don't, in mock trial land in her high school. So that was, again, an unconventional way of doing things. And I do want to say, full disclosure, we worked with the student for several years as well. And I was really not excited about mock trial. And I kept on trying to distract her and have her do other things. Like, are you sure? Like, I didn't think mock trial was going to be a winner for top colleges. I wanted her to do maybe something like more on her own independent. And she stuck to her guns, she was part of her school culture, part of her social life, part of her personal journey. And so you can argue with the college counselor. And, our work is really so much about being in dialogue and helping teens make their best decisions, and also showing them, yeah, you can have a different opinion than me, and I'm not going to authoritatively override you. That's not going to happen. So I don't know, memories.
Yeah, I really enjoyed working with that student. All of her essays were very memorable. And I remember the brainstorming process of that essay was really fun because, again, she just didn't take the route that you would have expected her to. You would think, oh, she's going to write about her art because that's what you write about with this prompt. So it's just another really great example of thinking about creativity more broadly.
And they weren't written in a fancy way either.
No. Yeah.
All right, we have one
more. So this is just a totally different kind of example and a little bit more of, the art student writing the art essay, right? So this student was a dancer and a choreographer, and he wrote about that passion. But I think the thing that's really interesting to note, and it was interesting for me also to look back at this essay, he completely followed the guidelines that Amy and I were talking about earlier. So he was very specific. He wrote about one project that he choreographed. He got into a lot of detail about the process, his creative process, from beginning to end. And then he also imagined, how future him was going to take this particular love of his into the future. And in this instance, his original inspiration came from a spoken word poem about bullying. And he used that in his choreography to tell his own story, which he had a very formative experience himself as a younger person he had been bullied because of his love of dance. And so he was able to get all of this into the essay and then showcase how he took this really very traumatizing, upsetting experience in his life and put that into his art. So he was also able to show the outcome, what I was mentioning earlier, the quantitative and qualitative outcomes. He was able to show both. So it was actually very exciting. He was a finalist for the Young Arts competition, which is a very prestigious performing arts and visual art competition for high school students. So he was able to weave that in there, but he was also able to touch on all of the personal growth, how his experiences fueled his art and what he planned to do with it. So I think it was an essay that hit a lot of notes. It was not just, I'm a creative person, end of story, right? It really got into all of those things that Amy and I have been talking about.
And it wasn't like, I'm a successful creative artist, because this student was already extremely successful. He had been in some movies, he had been in Broadway shows. So and he was a finalist for Young Arts, which is an elite accomplishment. So okay, I love this essay. It's beautiful. It's beautiful. And why is that essay beautiful? Because he describes the poem on bullying. He describes the way in which he choreographed the dance. So his movements would be responsive to the poem on bullying. And toward the end, he said, oh, and by the way, it was quite successful and got recognized. So that's another, another way that I think to talk about these essays is, if you are an accomplished artist, you still want to write this essay in a way that, that you appear humble. Artists are, they are attentive to the larger forces. So you want to show that in your essay as well. If that's the kind of thing you're showing, okay? Go back to student A, right? Who was just talking about being creative in his own life. Equally valid. But also if you're an accomplished artist, to tone, right? Not to be braggy. That's another piece, going back to the leadership. So, okay. All right, so I'm going to bring in a summary slide, and just to bring us all together here. So we've got the tips for UC Personal Insight question 2 on the left side. And then we've got our examples here on the right side. And so you can see that student A showed how he applied creativity to his personal style in his daily life. Student B showed how she used dramatic art to advance mock trial competitiveness. And student C showed how he created art to process a personal experience of bullying. So I hope that provides a cool recap for everyone. And I'm going to get out of screen sharing mode here. Oh, here are resources that I will have for you. Article about where we are with testing, gossip on the ACT, college waitlist. I have a really cool podcast episode on creativity that I forgot. I just didn't have a minute to put in here that I will include in a follow-up email. So, all right. Hold on. Speaker view, and I'm gonna stop sharing. And happy to take questions you guys have. Any questions? We also really want to emphasize how this is a great opportunity for STEM students, this essay. I don't know, Lauren, do you want to elaborate on that a little while people are gathering their thoughts on questions?
Sure. Yeah, I think in some ways it's almost it's just a unique opportunity, because I think with almost all of my STEM students that I've had, they just skip right over that question and they go and they look at the others and they think, okay, which ones can I write out of these other ones? And it's like you were saying earlier, that it's this gem. I think it's a missed opportunity, because colleges want to see creativity in all of their students, no matter the focus, the academic focus. Creativity can only enrich your academic and intellectual thinking. So it is just such a fabulous place to showcase how your brain works. I tell my students that a lot. Your writing is showing your admissions reader how you think, no matter what question you're answering. And so I think this one is just such a great place to show that when you come into a lab, a research lab, or when you sit down to think about your business idea, you're coming to that endeavor with a really creative, critical thinking. We talk a lot about critical thinking in our college planning sessions with our younger students. Creativity is critical thinking. So I just think that there's so many opportunities in this question that it's a good one to take advantage of, even if you don't have an idea right off the bat. I think it's a good place to brainstorm and see if you have a way to answer it.
Yeah, I mean, it used to be, for whatever reasons, I mean, on some levels it still is, but, the cultural sense of innovation, especially here in the Bay Area, but that's just been like the biggest thing, innovation. Are you innovative? And that, showing that in a college application was really key. And, what's the difference between innovation and creativity? And I think, most people know and who are listening, maybe not all, but I'm trained as a philosopher, so I could go on. We could just do like a philosophathon through the weekend right now if y'all want to stay. What's the difference between innovation and creativity? I think that's an excellent question. I have a few ideas already, but I think creativity is really going to be the thing, like the gold, the admissions gold. Given where I am, where we are in our culture right now, where the pandemic is showing, the issues, the weaknesses, the problems in American culture, and so I think creativity is going to be something that schools are going to be looking at. And then also, we also know just for years now, at least 10, 15 years, at least 10 years, the importance of the soft skills. So, leaders are people who can respond to the moment in new ways. And going back to my training with Aristotle, Aristotle's ethics, the ethical person is someone who's been trained to see into a situation, right? And how do you see into a situation? You have to look at maybe in places other people might not be looking. And that's why this is a great, for a STEM, if you're a STEM student and you want to know how to boost your UC application, write on this question. I think that's one way in which you can do that. We have a few questions. So one question is, do UCs expect answers to all personal insight questions? What if only a few apply to a student? So first of all, it's 4 out of 8. So pardon me for not being clear about that at the outset. So they expect that, an applicant will be able to answer 4 of the questions. And that last question, how do you stand out? It could be almost like topic of your choice. You could treat it that way. And so, definitely take advantage of the tips that UC already gives on its landing page for the personal insight questions. You shouldn't feel boxed in by the prompts. So if you're just feeling stumped, then the problem is with the teen not being open enough to him or herself. And so then there are things you can do, like you can just start, like if you're a teen, you can just start writing lists of things. So innovation, and it could be things you think are minor and just start putting them down, and maybe something will build out of that. Teens are hard on themselves. That's why essay writing is hard. It's not because you're not a good writer, it's because you judge yourself to the point where you don't get stuff out and you can't endure the stuff you don't like. That's generally the stumbling block. So I bet every teen can write on 4 questions, and you can just interpret it broadly.
Can I jump in real quick on that too, Amy?
Do.
One thing I've done with a lot of my students that's been really effective when they're stumped on which ones to choose or when they don't have ideas is I encourage them to do like a very little free write, like even just like 2 sentences responding to every single question, and then kind of take a look and see where their excitement sparks from there. And that, I think 9 times out of 10 is a really good exercise if you're stuck.
Close your eyes. Like I said, both Laura and I are active writers, active creative writers. And it's you need some courage to tell your story. It doesn't, and again, it doesn't have to be fancy, but it has to be yours, right? And what do you do to make something yours? You wrestle with it, you know. You wrestle with it a bit. So yeah, but there are different ways. So you can write with your eyes closed. Put the font in white. You know, say I'm going to do this for half an hour. I'm not going to look at it till tomorrow. Look at it tomorrow. And then usually it's so much better. It's so much better than, you know. So again, I am not a practicing Buddhist, but I've gleaned a lot of things. And there's this concept, the inner critic, Mara, M-A-R-A. And that's the piece that tends to, you know, stop us up. So, you know, whatever little tricks, writers are good writers, not because, again, they write amazing stuff out of the gate. It's because they do all these little tricks. Quick other little trick, I don't know. So I don't know if this is the case for you, Laura, but, you know, writers sometimes, you know, I was at a writing conference years back, and a famous author responded to the question, what do you do when you like have writer's block, you know, during the day? And the person said, I take a nap or I take a shower. So take a nap, take a shower, take a walk, take a bike ride, but get it out, get through that hard part. Okay, we have another question, which is an excellent question. Do other colleges have similar essay prompts as these UC prompts? Funny you should ask that. Not exactly, but pretty much most college application essays are getting at the same basic things. And what might they be getting at, you might ask, and funny. Remember those 7 C's, the 7 core attributes of admissions distinction? The UC essay prompts, the common application essay prompts, the supplemental essay prompts, they're all aiming to get that information out of the applicant, you know. So going back to those 7 C's, if a student is preparing him or herself in that way, in their very specific way, they'll be able to sort of answer any of these questions. Now, how does that come to bear during application time? Well, during application time, we've got a student who's done a whole bunch of different stuff, who's got the 7 C's, you know, a whole bunch of those to show for. And then we have like a system, a whiteboard virtually in Google Docs, and where we have all the prompts, and we create a system with our private schools and our UC prompts and the UT prompts and the coalition prompts, and we create an entire grid. And at the same time, a student is free writing all his or her stuff. And then we create like a large project out of the application process. And if we have a topic that might work for a UC essay and like the common application essay, so usually we'll have the student write the longer essay first and then cut it down. So there's a whole larger sort of project management system that happens because they overlap. They're not exactly the same, but they overlap. And so we then streamline the process by getting all of the prompts out, knowing in our free writing pretty much what schools are aiming for, and then starting to drop things in buckets and then coming up with the workflow. So the 7 C's is our last question, and we're going to have to end our time today in a moment, but the 7 C's stand for the 7 core attributes of admissions distinction, and that's something that I came up with. It's part of our Blue Stars methodology and the context we use to help students aim for, you know, the right array of activities for their profile. And you can find it on my website as a blog post called the 7 Key Attributes. So has a slightly different title there. So, okay, well, thanks so much for attending. I hope you got something out of this session. It's just fun to be able to show people that there are probably opportunities where you might not have realized. And I hope this makes you feel a little bit more energetic and buoyant. And creativity really is that thing that can take our sadness and turn it into excitement and joy. So I'm going to leave us with that today, and we'll see you next week for Personal Insight Question 3. And thank you for joining us, Laura.
Thank you so much, Amy.
Have a great week, everybody.
Bye, everyone.